Hey, it's Jordan with TYT and TYT Politics, and I am here in Euclid, Ohio, in a wonderful little apartment with a TYT viewer who reached out to me about your story, Meg. And you are an art teacher,
Yes.
which right away I was like, oh, that's interesting, because everything I've heard is the arts and cultures are the first thing to get cut when Republicans and Democrats pretty much piss on teachers and all the public sector workers. You're an art teacher, but you have had struggles, like most people we're talking to. Kind of talk to me about, this area of Euclid, Ohio. What's the DNA, and some of your story from having a home, a nice home, to now having to, live in an apartment.
Okay. Well, I've grown up in Euclid my whole life. I grew up here. I actually wasn't born here. I was born on an army base during Vietnam, but then we moved back here. My parents lived here their whole life, and my grandparents. And so Euclid is a very diverse community. It's right next to Cleveland, and we've seen a lot of hardship, especially with the housing. So when I was younger and I left high school, I ended up getting married young and having a child. So, that was a struggle. We did live in Cleveland and, pay the rent.
How old were you when you had your first child?
20. Okay. And he's my only child, Joe. I ended up getting divorced. It was a terrible relationship. I got out of that marriage and I found myself a single parent. So I was on government assistance for a while, and I didn't want that to be my destiny, so I went to college.
Sorry, I was going to ask, during this time, you weren't working?
Well, I had little jobs, like I was working in a flower shop, minimum wage things, So I ended up going to college for a little bit, and I got a degree in graphic design, and I worked in this little job in the library. It was great, but there was nowhere to move up, so I decided to go back and get my bachelor's degree, and I did that in painting and printmaking, and so doing that, I was unable to work full-time and do this college thing at the same time, so I ended up having to take out a lot of loans so that I could go to school and finish.
Where did you go to school?
I went to Ursuline College first, and then later on I went to Case, Western Reserve. But anyway, so I was working freelance for a little bit. It was difficult, no insurance and stuff. So I ended up working for a charter school. Really eye-opening experience, but a terrible experience at the same time.
What were you teaching at the charter school?
Well, I was teaching art, but I had no certificate teaching credentials whatsoever. And this school it was crazy. I mean, it was sad because they were cheating the government money. They ended up being closed down after a while. But I mean, it was not unionized. I was fired in the middle of the year. But the one thing that it did do is it gave me a passion for teaching. So I went back to school at Case Western Reserve, and I became a teacher, got my master's there. More loans, okay. So my son at that time was, I think, in middle school or so. I got a job teaching in Euclid.
Sorry, let me interrupt. Not to defame the father, but I'm assuming you weren't getting a lot of money from him?
Oh, no. Not at all, no. So
As in zero?
Zero amount. In fact, almost in the negative.
So basically, you're racking up debt for yourself, you have a child, you're not getting any child support, and you got to rack up more debt to teach.
And not only student loan debt, but credit card debt, because while I was student teaching, I couldn't work, so I had to use my credit cards to pay for food and, just everything you need. So then my son graduated from high school in '08. And, okay, let me backtrack a little bit. I bought a house in '97. And I was real happy about it because even though I wasn't making a lot of money, I didn't have a lot of debt, so I was able to buy this house, and it was great. Well, then my grandfather got sick, and my grandmother couldn't stay in the house she was living in. So this was a house that was in my family from great-grandma to grandma. My dad lived there. It was a house that had a lot of sentimental value to me, and it was a really beautiful big house. So my family offered to let me buy the house for a cheaper price. And I thought, great, this is a great investment. You know, I'm going to be able to maybe eventually sell the house for more or pay it off quickly. Either way, I was excited about moving into that house.
This was a time, late 90s, the economy was doing fairly well. Tech boom, all that.
Exactly. Well, then I'm racking up student loans and credit card bills to, just to, take care of my son. And then my son was looking at going to college. Okay. And now I'm graduated from college, so I started paying my student loan debt. And then my son's looking to go to college. And and this is the crazy thing, because I was making too much money now, they don't see, when you go doing the FAFSA and all that, they don't look at what your debts are. They just
I'm sorry, doing the what?
To get federal financial aid. So when we were looking into getting grants and stuff for my son.
This was the late 2000s?
This was like in 07. Okay.
So when the economy was starting to go off a cliff.
Right, except we weren't sure yet. It was like, didn't seem like it because I'm working. And even though I had debt, I was able to pay it. Well, then my son, and I'm thinking, okay, because, of my situation, single mom, all this, Joe could probably get some good financial aid. Well, he got pretty much zero. He got like maybe $1,000 a year, and so.
Where did Joe go?
He went to Ohio University. And so he ended up having to take out his own loans, but because he had no credit, he wasn't able to take the full amount out necessary. So I ended up having to take a Parent Plus loan out. Now, Parent Plus loans are usually higher percentage rates, and you have to pay them immediately. It's not like wait till you're out of school and you get that 6-month grace period. There's no grace period. You start paying them. Well, it ended up getting to be too much. It just started snowballing on me. And then my house needed repairs and stuff, and something had to give. So I thought, well, okay, I'm gonna try to sell the house. It's a nice house. I could probably make some money. And I couldn't sell the house. This is when the housing started downturn. Finally, I had to short sale the house, and a house that was worth $125,000, I got $35,000. Which all went to the bank. I didn't get any, so it was pretty sad. So then
And this was the house that was in your family for a century.
Yeah, the house was built in 1912, but I think my family started living in it in the 30s, 40s maybe, So it was sad to see it go. I mean, I drive by it all the time still. It's down the street. I am happy that I don't have that big lawn to cut, and I don't have to pay these huge electric bills and such, but I didn't feel like it was a choice so much as a necessity with all the student loans I had to pay and all that stuff. So, but thankfully my son actually did finish school, but now he's paying loans, I'm paying loans, and it's here I thought, at this time in my life, I'd be saving money, That's another thing with my job, because of the state, KSIC, slashing all the state funding for schools. There was a big period of time. We didn't have a raise for 6 years. In fact, we took a pay cut. We took a 3% pay cut. So we're just starting to get back. So I'm a decade behind. So when I go to retire, I'm going to be a decade behind in money, So that's a big problem too for a lot of the teachers here in Ohio, especially I think, and probably all over the country. I would think, imagine.
So, if we're just getting into numbers, you don't have to tell me, but what are we looking at? It sounds like you racked up between you and your son, at least over 100,000.
Yeah. So I'm at about 80. And I think my son's probably around 50 or 40. Now, a lot of that loans, it was beyond what he had to pay for college. He also needed books. He also needed to live there, and so.
Sorry to interrupt, but you're at 80 now, but overall, how much have you paid already?
Yeah, well, that's another crazy thing. So my student loan for me, I owe $20,000 about, and I've been paying since 2002, and I'm at, I think the original loan was for $22,000. I'm at $19,000 for paying for 10 years because I'm paying all interest, because I can't afford to pay more than, the actual payment. I can't pay on the principal because I'm paying for all these other loans too.
Has the interest has gone up?
The interest is at about 7% for the Parent Plus loan, and my other loan's at about, I think, about 4%.
So between you and your son, you're talking 120, 130,000.
Yeah, I don't even want to know, to be honest with you. I actually got a sheet about how long I'm going to be paying my loan, and it looks like into like when I'm about 72, I'll be done paying all my loans off.
That's if you're, not to scare you, but if they don't cut more art jobs. And
Right, yeah. I'm lucky right now because the principal we have at the school I'm in, she's all for the arts, and we have a very strong art program. But you never know what's going to happen. I thought that, when I started my job in 2002, I thought I was going to get a 3% raise every year. I thought that my medical was going to stay the same. My medical, I started off by paying nothing for my medical. And then it went to paying just for my son. Okay, so we had to pay like a little premium every month. Now I'm paying just for myself every month. And we have like this crazy deductible and a copay, and the medical went up. When I first started working there, our prescriptions were $5. Now they're like, I think 20, and if 15 if it's generic or something. So it's just like, I just feel like everything is going counter to what inflation has been. It's like we're going backwards, and not making more money. It's like it's not going with pace of how much inflation's going up, like how much everything costs.
well, you look at the chart of productivity over the last 25 to 20, 30 years, it's way up.
Yeah.
And then the wages are way down or stagnant, but the earnings way up for the top 1%.
Yeah.
Just from a day-to-day point of view, you mentioned the loans, the credit card debt. I'm assuming you might be trying to help your son as best you can. I've heard people deciding between taking food or medicine. What are your day-to-day choices and sacrifices you have to make?
Well, I did file bankruptcy for that credit card debt so I could pay my student loans.
But not as many times as Donald Trump has.
Yeah. Right. So that helped, except for it didn't help my credit. So when I went to buy a car just recently, because the car, thank God my dad gave me a car. My mom passed away in 2010, and so he gave me that car, which helped me a lot. But, it got older, and so I needed to buy a new car. And when I went to buy my new car, my credit was kind of bad. So I had a bad credit, or a bad interest rate for that. It was like 6%, where most people are paying like 3% right now for car loans, So, those little things all add up. You know what I mean? Like I said, I thought, like, way back before I graduated from college, I thought I'd be in a totally different place than I am right now.
And, obviously Bernie's movement, not that it was all young people. I saw plenty of, 40-year-olds, 60-year-olds, 70-year-olds, your father. But I think he spoke particularly to the young people, and it gave a spotlight on millennial age people buried in student loan debt. And one thing that stands out to me about you, you're 40, and you're buried, 47, excuse me, 47. You're buried in student loan debt. And this is something that maybe I needed to change my thinking on, because I assumed, Hillary supporters, generally baby boomers, maybe they're, for the most part, are out of debt. But I think what you're showing is there's plenty of middle-aged people who are in just as deep as the millennials.
Right, and that's why I contacted you, because I love the Young Turks so much. I watch you guys all the time, and I noticed an emphasis on student loan debt for millennials, but people my age, especially single mothers, are sandwiched because they want to help their children. But while I was going to school, my son was growing up, I didn't have the money to save for him to go to college because I was sending myself to college. So it's kind of like when my mom was, in her day, when like that sandwich, I guess they used to call them the sandwich generation, where they're taking care of their parents who are aging and their kids who are younger. It's similar, because I have my own student debt, and then I'm helping my son out with his. And, I'm just hoping that by helping him, that it kind of stops that cycle so he can start saving for his kids.
So as somebody who's been in the education system for 2 decades. When you see $6 trillion spent on Iraq and Afghanistan, that's the number they tell us. When you see trillions on a bailout for bankers, you see, I could go on and on about the millions, billions, trillions spent to help, corporations, obviously the wars, but then you hear public college, which would solve a lot of these issues. We just can't afford it. It's not realistic. What do you think?
Well, I think it is realistic. I think that a lot of other countries do it. I know Yugoslavia, if I wanted to go there now, I could go there to go to college for free. So I think that obviously they say that because, if they do that, then the people who are making all the money off of wars and stuff won't be as rich. That's pretty obvious. It also bothers me because being in the district I'm in, most of my students can't afford college or, are really struggling at home, and so they turn to the military. And so I feel like we're actually paying for my students to go to war and to be, either killed or injured or, even psychologically,
It's interesting. It's interesting. Basically, since the government makes getting an education pretty much a prison sentence economically, many of the students you're teaching don't go to get an education and then go to war, and it's a cycle that keeps on continuing.
Yeah, and they're promised money for college when they get out. A lot of the students either never finish because it's devastating over there in the Middle East, or they come back and the promises aren't kept. I think they're under the assumption that they're going to pay 100% of the college debt, college costs, and that's just not the case. So, and then they're giving years of their life up for something that, to me, is immoral. To go over to the Middle East and, drone bomb children or people who are innocent, it has a psychological effect on these kids who are so young. I don't think they know what they're getting themselves into.
It's not even to mention, it's kind of difficult if a student of yours chooses to go to the military because you can't afford college. If you go to the military and you come back with PTSD or whatever other things soldiers come back, it's a little difficult to embark on a teaching career or whatever they want to do. So it seems like there's just a lot of domino effect and ripple effects to the core of indebting people for the rest of their lives.
Yes, yeah, I agree.
And I kind of think it's interesting because you had one son. Was everything going on? I know the father wasn't in the picture, but did you just make a choice you only wanted one son, or was it economic? Like, it would be crazy for me to try to meet someone and have another child look at the economic situation I'm in already.
Right. Definitely I thought about it and I thought that would be a nice thing, but things just didn't work out that way. And you're right. I'm not going to start over and even push myself further down, my years in retirement and all that. So my son Joe, he's a great kid. I always say, like, when people ask me that question, I was like, oh, well, I just stopped at perfection, because he is a really, really great kid. What I love about him is he's a teacher because he's passionate about helping young people. And so he's doing something great to help the world. And I like that. He's a very smart person. He just gave me a book by Diane Ravitch that I read, and that's another thing, like, about Hillary Clinton, I just want to say. So, being in the teachers union, they're actually backing her. And, I wrote an email, countering that and saying how Bernie Sanders would be better, because, like, in this book, it does describe how Hillary Clinton is for charter schools and the edu business, which, like I said, I was in a charter school, and I know that there probably are a few which are good. But the ones that I've come in contact with it's just all about the guy at the top making a ton of money, rolling up in his Lincoln every once in a while, collecting his money and leaving a school with no resources. I was an art teacher. They gave me zero money for supplies. It was a joke. It was, And the thing is, these schools, like, yeah, they might catch up with them, but now these kids have lost 1 or 2 years. It's just not something that I can get behind. I won't vote for Hillary Clinton for a lot of reasons, and that's one of them.
Let me ask you, obviously you deal with students all the time. I feel like when you look at parents, we were just in Altoona, Pennsylvania, and Broderick, and the offshoring and deindustrialization is rampant. So when you have parents getting laid off and having to work two to three jobs, obviously that takes a mental toll. What are the ramifications you've seen in kids? Because, for example, where I grew up, when I went to high school, people smoked pot. But now I read that my old high school is like the heroin capital of Long Island. Yeah. So do you see that because the parents are getting laid off and having to work 2 to 3 jobs, there's a ripple effect to the kids in terms of whatever it is, bad behavior, drugs, you name it?
Yeah, definitely the family dynamic has a lot to do with how our kids act and what they do. We have issues with kids who... like just recently, there was a kid with a loaded gun in the school. They got him and no one got hurt, but you never, why does he have that gun? What is he feeling that he needs that gun for?
Where are the parents?
Right, and this summer we had right next door at the park. Now we have these great kids who are trying to stand up. We actually have a stand-up group at Euclid, Stand Up Against Violence, and they had this wonderful party down at the park. A kid came and started shooting. 2 of our kids got shot. And so it's real. It's not a game. It's not like this fighting, with fists. It's, a lot of really serious weapons. And then you have kids who have a lot of issues mentally. One of my students was just held up at gunpoint right down the street. He came back to school traumatized. It's hard to learn in that environment. It's hard to learn when you have those types of things on your mind every day, And so we do the best we can as educators to help them, be there for them. It's a difficult job. I love it because I feel like I am doing something positive, but it's draining.
And bigger picture, outside of just your situation, obviously Bernie's movement woke a lot of people up. Kind of invigorated a lot of people who felt like there was nobody actually out there backing them. I won't get into Bernie specifically, I don't want to depress the audience, but when you look across the country, we're going through the Midwest this week, but what do you think is the disconnect between our elites in DC and urban cities? Because they either don't care or they're not truly aware of what's going on in areas that have been deindustrialized, or the broader effects of, basically education as a prison sentence. What are they missing?
What are the people in Washington missing? Well, I think there's one thing they're not missing is a lot of money. I think they have too much money. I just think that they're not going to, as long as, like Jenk said, as long as there's money in politics, things aren't going to change. Why would you turn down all kinds of money to help out some kids in Euclid if you don't have to, and it's there. So a lot of it, they're not here. Even at the state level, I've never seen John Kasich come into our school or into our district. He has a lot to say about teachers and teachers' unions negatively. I would like him to spend a week in my classroom and see the wonderful things we're doing and the struggles we're dealing with.
Well, he also tried to rip unions' collective bargaining through SB 5.
Yes, and we went down there and we sat in that state office for a long time, and I think he's realizing that we're serious. I know there's a teacher shortage right now, and, people are scratching their heads wondering why. Well, like in Finland, they start teachers out at like 80 grand, and they respect teachers there. And so I think that goes a long way for, positive outcomes in the education sector.
Lastly, let's plug your work. Oh. What do we got here? You've got a mix of things here.
Okay, well, as an art teacher, I always do the projects with my students. So these are projects I've done with my students. this is right here, Bernie. This is an homage to Bernie Sanders, and it's called A Little Personal Shrine. And students would choose someone who inspires them and then create a little collage in approximate symmetry. That's what we were learning about, just to honor somebody or someone inspires them. So that's that. And I gave it to my dad for his birthday, so got to make sure I get that to him before he leaves. And this one is I teach a college class at Euclid. That's another thing. I think there's not enough out there, like in the media and such, about the positive things that go on in high schools. We have this great program where students can earn college credit while they're in high school. So this is a course I teach, and I do a lot with social issues and art. So I have students do a print based on a social issue they believe in. So this is about mass incarceration of African American males, and in place of stars, I have little prisoners, the little African American prisoners, to white prisoners, and so I just wanted to make a statement about that because so many of my students are on that path. I remember another newscast by Jenk and Anna talking about how we have almost we're policing the heck out of our schools. Just the other day, one of my students carried down the hall in handcuffs. I said to the guy, to the police officer, does he really need to be in these handcuffs? I understand you want to be safe, but how about you're actually pushing them in that direction of not doing right? You start treating kids as if they're criminals for these little things. I know that they do things that aren't good. Believe me, I don't want principals jumping all over me saying, well, we had a kid with a gun, a loaded gun today, or this kid was selling drugs, or whatever the case. But parading them through the school in handcuffs, I think, is not the environment we want. Let's find out what's going on with this kid so we can help them get out of it. And we do have that. We do have programs like that. We have great social workers and such, but I just wish that we could, whatever they're doing in Solon, our affluent district down the way, I want happening in our school as well.
Well, I'm glad our kids have you. You've been terrific. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thanks, Emma.